My name is David.
And my name is Jason.
And this is Discern Realities, a Dungeon World podcast. Our first segment is What Happened Here Recently?
Okay, so continuing this Deathfrost Doom storyline that we kind of have going on the podcast lately, I kicked off the first session of my multi-session run of Deathfrost Doom, and it was really good. I was quite happy with it. There was lots of great character development. We did a really good job building the tension of the scenario. We aren't quite at the actual Deathfrost Shrine yet. It was kind of just like the journey to the mountain, but it was a great first session. One of the things I really liked about it was we did a lot of really terrific sort of like character discovery. So the way we play Dungeon World, because we don't do bonds, we don't have a lot of like built-in front-loaded like history with the characters, right? They're a little sketchy when we start normally. And also because I may only have these players for 5 sessions, I like that we have just a pretty contained amount of time to like do our adventure. We're not playing the same group of people for 40 sessions, right? So I kind of have a certain pressure to kind of get the adventure going, right? In a lot of the Powered by the Apocalypse games, and in fact in Dungeon World to some degree, you spend that first session kind of just following the characters around, seeing what they do, learning about them. And so Monster Hearts, which is another Powered by the Apocalypse game, its first session is really, really fun because you just spend that first session kind of asking questions of the characters and forming, talking about their history with each other, and then just kind of letting them wander around and see what happens, see what kind of trouble they get into. But when I run Dungeon World, I have different pressures. I've got to get them to the dungeon, because we've only got 4 sessions to get this thing done, this adventure that we're doing. So I've been spending a lot of time really, really honing and perfecting my sort of first session, so that we can learn about these characters that kind of start a little sketchy. We can learn about their background. We can learn about their motivations. We can learn about their history with each other while also proceeding apace to the dungeon, right? And I was just really happy with how it went. I think that was just kind of my main thing. I'm happy to talk about some of the things we did, but I was just really pleased with how it all really developed. It felt so natural and it felt good.
Right. So on the show, you've talked about how you modify the Undertake Perilous Journey move to include some kind of standard questions that help you get to know the party dynamic and party characters before. Did you expand on that, or did you do something different that you liked better?
Well, I basically did that, but I really lingered on some of the answers and did lots of follow-ups. So they're on their way initially to this village at the base of the mountain, right? At the base of Deathfrost Mountain. And we do the Undertake a Perilous Journey. I always start with a fight. So we have the fight. The fight's done. And even during the fight, we really don't know where the characters are going or what they're doing. We just know they're on a journey somewhere. They have a fight. And then after it's over, we talk about their motivations for being there. And I use that Undertake a Perilous Journey. I've talked about that sort of expanded version of it that I do in the past. I use that as a way of kind of filling in that backstory. So some of the questions that get asked while we're kind of, doing those roles and kind of just talking about the journey, I ask one of the players, well, so who do you know in Frostbury? That was the name of the village. Who do you know in Frostbury? And their answer really, really informed a lot about why they were going to Frostbury, what sorts of things, what kind of help they can expect to find there, and that kind of thing. I asked another character, the wizard, well, why are you going to Deathfrost Mountain? Everyone else is going for treasure, but why are you going, right? And so we learn a little bit about their particular motivations. On the Trailblazer role, I always ask the Trailblazer, tell me about something that you are a landmark or some sort of marker in the geography that you're using to guide by, right? But I kind of expanded it a little bit this time, and I said, tell me about a landmark that you're guiding by, and then tell me a legend surrounding that landmark, right? And then I went even further after I got the legend. I asked, why is that important to you? Why do you remember that story? We learned a lot about that character and why it was so important to them. And it was really quite good. Of course, in the Quartermaster, I always ask, what does character X do that you find annoying? What does character Y do that you find endearing? That kind of thing, just to kind of flesh the party dynamics out a little bit. And I always ask the scout, like, what's the most dangerous foe or creature, in this region that you're really looking out for? But then I went a little further this time and I said, why are you so scared of it? Like, what history do you have with it, right, that makes you so scared of it? So I just kind of expanded those questions a little bit more and to kind of get just like a deeper, richer sense of things.
Oh, that's really cool. Yeah, I like that. I found myself doing some of that when I ran the 1v1 Deathfrost Doom a little while ago, just to kind of learn some more about the character, because like asking one question wasn't enough when it's just like the one character.
Right. Yeah. Oh, and one little like kind of logistical tip, or one sort of like running the table tip that I found is very helpful. I start with that fight, and then we talk about the journey, and then we do the Undertake a Perilous Journey, or I talk about, that's what we're going to do. We assign the roles and all that. And then I go across the table and I give each of them their question first. Before we get any roles, I ask them the questions that I want to explore with their character, and then I take a break. Okay, like I take a 5-minute break after they've got their questions, so that they have some time to actually think about the answer a little bit, and then we come back, and I find that it just makes the answers like that much more deep and interesting. So
yeah, that's a good tip. It's easier, especially like if you have lots of characters, to kind of parcel out the questions and then come back to the first guy and be like, okay, now you've had some time to think about it.
Right. Yeah. That's actually something that the group told me they really appreciated about this session when we were doing we didn't quite do Roses and Thorns, but when we did our sort of our quasi Roses and Thorns at the end of the session, like just kind of talking about how things went. One of the things that the positive feedbacks I got was everyone appreciated the frequent breaks that I took. Like I would time the breaks with like key moments in the journey or in the story, so that and usually like leaving some questions lingering or hanging out in the air so that the players could think about it a little bit. They really appreciated that. So
yeah, that's great. Well, is there anything else you wanted to say about it?
No, that's it. It was just an awesome session, and I was just super pleased with it.
Cool. Let's go ahead and move on to our next segment. Our next segment is What Should I Be on the Lookout For? This week I wanted to highlight the third Monster Manual. We did Monster Manual 1 and 2 in an earlier episode. These are John Stone Metzger's Monster Manuals. The third one came out in February. It's called Market in the Woods. And it's really great. I just finished reading it, and I like it a lot. It is more than about a market in the woods. That is like a central feature of it, but it's really more about like the surrounding kingdoms. I don't even know if you'd call them kingdoms, but they're populations of strange creatures that live in these woods and swamps and surrounding areas that frequent this market in the woods. And the market in the woods is a place where mankind's enemies gather to swap things and armor up. And it's kind of a crazy amalgamation of all these strange creatures that are selling wares that you can't find anywhere else.
That's cool. All right.
It does do one thing that the Dungeon World book says you shouldn't do. It sells magical items.
Like for money? Like for coin?
Potentially for coin. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I personally don't even understand why that's a rule. I mean, like...
I understand things can be priceless, but you offer somebody enough money.
Yeah, I don't...
Now it has a price.
I've never understood that wrinkle in the rules. I don't understand why that's like explicitly called out. Like you can't purchase them with like on the market. Like it just seems a little weird, especially because like if you have like characters who've been going for a while and they're like collecting coin and stuff, there are many things you can spend your money on in Dungeon World. You start collecting some coin and like what the hell are you even going to spend it on? Just more adventuring gear? I mean, that's actually not maybe a good topic for a future episode, like ways to, handle stuff like that, like, making their money count for something. But
well, I'm telling you, Market in the Woods is where you make your money count.
Okay. I have a physical copy of it, but I haven't yet taken a look at it. But just thumbing through it, it's just like all of the other books that John Stone Metzger did with, I think Nathan Woods is the artist.
Jones.
Nathan Jones. Yeah, it's beautiful, right? Like, it's so gorgeous. Like, the art is just so colorful.
Oh yeah, the full color art,
like
so evocative,
so good. They do color so well. In fact, one of Jon Stone's other recent products is Space Worm versus Moonicorn, which is like that little kind of weird sci-fi dungeon world thing, and that's a pricey book, but it's beautiful. Oh god, it's like so stunningly beautiful. So I can't wait to tear into this one.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Like, out of this book, you could run an entire campaign for, like, I don't know, 15 sessions easy.
I believe it. Yeah, I believe it. The one that I've read all the way through is Terrors of the Ancient World, which is the first one. And that one, like, you can do like a whole massive campaign just using some of those monsters and the stories behind them. So.
Yeah. The editing's very nice. They did a great job unpacking everything, because it starts with some of the denizens that frequent the Market in the Woods. And you don't really know what the Market in the Woods is yet, but you know these kinds of creatures go there, and this is what they're looking for. There's a thing called Death Wolf, and it goes there to seek the souls of dead gods to consume. So that's the kind of thing that you can get at the Market in the Woods. You know that. That's the first thing you know. And then there's these Earth Keepers that are like gnome-like creatures, and they're going to the Market in the Woods, trading everything they possibly can to get gold so that they can bury the gold, because they think the gold belongs in the ground. And, and it's just great. Towards the middle of the book, you actually get to see the Market in the Woods, and then it starts unpacking some of the other companies of, you know, bandits and mercenaries that frequent it, and then other creatures that will do anything they can to get coins so they can spend it at the Market in the Woods. And it does a great job unpacking this whole big area surrounding the Market in the Woods.
Awesome. Cool.
So can't say enough good things about it. I can't wait to get some of this stuff out in my dungeons, and I hope that you'll check it out. Let's go ahead and move on to our next segment. Our next segment is What Here Is Not What It Appears to Be.
All right, let's talk about monster hit points. This came up in a conversation between you and I the other day on Slack, as I recall. And
yeah.
It got me thinking about it. So listeners, David posed to me, do you ever cheat on the monster's hit points? You know, do you fudge the monster's hit points ever? The answer is yes, I do. I do. I don't do it all the time, and I wouldn't even say I do it often. I just do it occasionally. But yeah, I do. I think there are some instances when it's okay to not like perfectly follow the listed hit points in the book for a monster. Okay. And those are, you know, so anyway, what do you think, just at the outset, David? I'm curious, like, just the premise. Like, do you think it's okay to fudge a monster's hit points?
So on the outset, it really depends on if your super rules is written, I guess, and how much prep you're doing for your dungeon. Because I was kind of asking the question more in the mindset of, like, I've got all these creatures, I've got stats for them, but then my characters decide to attack something else that I didn't have stats for. And so I'm having to come up with them on the fly.
Oh, I see. Like coming up with stuff on the fly, like how slavish do you have to be to the stats and stuff? I'm going to tell you the answer is you don't have to be. Okay, like you don't.
Right, but that might be something that really intimidates like newer GMs. They're like, oh, especially if they're coming from really OSR set types of games where it's like, oh, I need to have my stats all lined up and ready to go.
Well, here's the thing. I actually don't think there's anything wrong with that. I mean, I truly don't. Like, I think if you have time to like prep all that stuff, you have, if you need a monster on the fly and you just grab some stats from somewhere, that's great. If or maybe you find like an analogous monster, like, okay, you're fighting some grave robbers or something, well, find an entry in the human part of the monster book that fits that and use that, oh, you're fighting this particular type of slime instead of a black pudding. Okay, well, just use the black pudding stats. Like, you can do stuff like that. Like, that's not a big deal, right? Like, just you find like a very close monster and then just use the stats for it instead of making up a whole brand new monster. I do that all the time. Right.
And then often, like, if there's a danger that I'm not quite sure, like, what kind of damage it's dealing, like, I think there's a really helpful table in the Dungeon World book that's like, if it's life threatening, it's this kind of damage. If it's human sized kind of creature, it's this kind of damage. And so I kind of use that.
Yeah. I mean, you just kind of it takes a certain amount of like experience to kind of do it intuitively, but it's not hard. I mean, it's not hard. Orcs do about a D6. Traps do about a D10. Big monsters do about a D10 plus 1 or 2. Something really, really strong will do like best of 2D10, right? So you start to work out a scale in your mind the more you play, and you can kind of, adjust on the fly, that sort of thing. So here's the thing. What I was talking about earlier was, like, for example, if they're fighting a monster and it's got 10 hit points left, and the fighter comes in, or let's say not the fighter, let's say like somebody like the cleric or something who does a D8 damage. They come in and they hit, and boom, they roll their damage, and they get 8 points. They get their max. They're so excited. They're like, yeah, I got my max. I just let them kill the monster sometimes, even if it has 10 hit points and they only got 8 hit points damage on it. Because here's the thing. I feel like it's okay to fudge the monster's HP in the middle of a fight if it would make the narrative pacing stronger, right? That's kind of the main thing. Like, we're having this awesome moment. They've been fighting this thing, and bam, the character gets their max HP. Like, they hit it really hard, and everyone's excited about that. It feels a little lame to then say, yeah, that was awesome. Go ahead and narrate your hit. You didn't kill it, but go ahead and tell me how you hurt it. It feels a little anticlimactic, kind of, at that point, because then the wizard finishes it off with a magic missile or some shit, which is totally anticlimactic, right? So I think like it's okay to on the margins to kind of fudge the HP a little bit for narrative pacing purposes. I think that's okay to do.
Yeah, I could definitely see that being advantageous, especially if you're having a pacing issue where like they've been fighting this goddamn thing for way too long.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, yeah.
Or you're getting to the end of your session and they've basically killed the big bad. Let them have it. I'll tell you one circumstance where I don't. Where I stick to the hit points of the monster, though, like really, really religiously, and that's if the characters are close to dying too.
Okay. Well, so give me set it up for me. Like, what do you mean by that?
So they've been in this fight with, something for several rounds of, back and forth combat, and the monster's almost dead, but one of the characters is also almost dead, and it's his turn to take a swing at it and try and engage with it.
Yeah.
I want the honest result of like, does he kill the creature or does the creature kill him?
Yeah. I should mention 90% of the time I go with the honest result. Like, I don't fudge it. Like, I mean, the vast majority of the time we run it straight down the line. But, and because I don't find that my combats really last that long at all anyway. Like, I don't feel like that's usually a problem. Like, if you look at our that fight that Lucero had with the 3 orcs and the ogre, that was over in the blink of an eye, right? Because the rolls went your way, and and narratively what you described, it made sense to end the fight to me, So my fights have kind of a summary feeling like that anyhow, so it's not usually a big deal. But every now and then a fight's kind of stretching on a while, and you're like, okay, this is, for purposes of pacing, we need to wrap this shit up. Or you have a situation where, what I think is interesting sometimes, just to kind of switch gears a little bit, is when the fight is more about fictional positioning rather than like just trading blows,
Right. You mean like with Tor's 2 hit point golem?
That's a perfect example. That was a fight, listeners, you'll be reminded a couple episodes ago of Tor, who was playing a game with his kid, and he recorded some of that, a recollection of that for us. That fight, he said that the golem had 2 hit points. It only had 2 hit points, 1 hit point in each eye, right? Because the fight was more about the fictional positioning. It was about his kid's character, like getting into place, like avoiding the golem smashes, getting close enough to shoot getting the crossbow, getting close enough to shoot the crossbow in the eye. That was the fight. It wasn't the like, I'm trying to just like hack away at you, right? So it's the same concept behind the 16 hit point dragon, right? I mean, the 16 hit point dragon only has 16 freaking hit points, but that's because it's not about the hit points. It's about the fictional positioning. That's the tough part, right? It's those defy danger rolls. It's those sort of automatic golden opportunity style hits that the dragon gets, right? It's about all that stuff. And I think sometimes if a fight's going long, or if it looks like a fight is going to be like it's just going to be, you can already tell it's going to be kind of a slog, try to reframe it as a GM to where it becomes more about fictional positioning than just trading blows. And so I let my players give me a chance to think of like a really cool way out of a situation, or to come up with like a really awesome like ambush or plan of attack, and then if they execute on that, I kind of just ignore the hit points at that point. I kind of just say, okay, awesome, you guys successfully executed this, just tell me how you kill it. Right.
I mean, that's like, when you push something down a cliff, like it just kills it, right? Like, you
Right,
don't roll,
yeah.
you don't roll your damage when you push him down the cliff.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think technically per the rules you're supposed to, but like depending on the cliff, I suppose. But like, if it's a really high cliff, yeah, that's just death, right? But we want the fun and the drama of the encounter, right? And that's not necessarily in like the trading of blows. So.
Right. I mean, that's like what happened with Lucero. He didn't get dealt any hit points of damage, but he got his eye gouged out and he got hamstrung.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It might just be like the other game experiences we have coming into this where we're okay with kind of fudging the rules a little bit. I don't know.
I mean, I don't even consider it fudging the rules. I really don't. I think it's a narrative focused system, and I think there has to be a certain degree of like flexibility there, in order to like support the fiction, to support the narrative. You've got to be willing to be a little flexible in that way. Everyone enjoys it more. Like it's way more enjoyable at the table than like getting the creature down to 1 hit point and then like, watching the drama of 3 characters trying to hit it. I mean, come on.
Right. Yeah. That being said, Dungeon World works if you want to play it.
It totally does. Yeah.
Very, very, very strictly. We've done that for a long time.
It's still the best. Yeah. Playing it strictly it's still better, in my opinion, than a lot of other games. So
yeah, that was an interesting discussion, interesting thoughts. I'd love to hear what listeners think about it. Let's go ahead and move on to our next segment. Our next segment is what here is useful or valuable to me.
All right, so we have a brand new contest for Discern Realities listeners. Before, we did a contest for your original Magic items, and after that, we did a location-based custom move contest. This contest is sort of a tie-in with our brand new little RPG supplement fanzine thing called Codex. So we talked about that last episode. We have this magazine called Codex, this little short magazine. It has lots of art. It has some Dungeon World things in it, plus an Urban Shadows thing in it. Here's what we want. The image, there's a cover image, right? The very first page has this cover image of this very, very serious, powerful looking woman sitting on a tree stump, having just stabbed the tree stump, I think, and there's blood going everywhere. It's a little unclear what's going on. She's stabbed the tree stump, we think, and there's blood going everywhere, and she's ripped up a little sapling, and there's this horrible, scary moon in the background. It's a beautiful, beautiful image by Dirk Detweiler Leichte, who is somebody we've talked about on the show before in the past. Great image. Here's what we want. The contest is give us something original inspired by that image. Okay, so this can be a magic item. This can be a custom move. It looks like she's engaged in some kind of ritual to me. Maybe you want to give us the ritual, like the steps for that ritual and what she was trying to do. And it can be about anything in the image. It can be about her cloak. It can be about the moon. It can be about that sword. It can be whatever you want, any scope you want. It just has to be inspired by that image.
Right, because the image has no move currently associated with it.
It's just an image. It's got no story or anything. I call her the Codex Keeper, and that's what we'll call the contest, the Codex Keeper. So we're looking for custom moves, magic items, maybe a monster if that seems appropriate. If you want to go into the backstory of it a little bit, maybe and fill in some of the details for whatever this character's backstory is, and that inspires you to create something, go for it. The winner, here's how it's going to go. We're going to select maybe about half a dozen that we like the best, and those are going to go into a deluxe version of that issue of Blood in the future. But one of those people will also be the actual winner of the contest, and they will get a $25 gift certificate to drive through.
So I went ahead and wrote up my entry. I guess it's not for judgment. It's just more of an example.
Okay. It's a good example. Yeah, actually, it's pretty good. I like it.
Yeah, I hammered it out pretty quick, but I wanted you guys to have an idea of what we're looking for, the kind of thing we might be looking for. So this is just my example. I call it the stump of the first tree. In days past, when wickedness ruled the land, the first tree that ever lived was chopped down and used as fuel for the fires of war. Nowadays, whenever the blood moon rises, a small sprout of a tree rapidly grows near the stump of the first tree, seeking vengeance for past wrongs. Here's the custom move associated with that. If you attempt to pull the small offspring of the first tree out by the roots, roll plus wisdom. On a 10+, the offspring comes out without issue, gain 3 uses of blood bark. On a 7 and 9, gouts of blood begin to pour out of the stump of the first tree. The roots of the offspring drink of it greedily as it grows into a monstrous menace. You must defeat the Assassin Vine, which is on Dungeon World page 265, to get the 3 uses of Blood Bark.
Cool. And then what's Blood Bark?
I have no idea.
All right. That's the kind of shit I love. Like I do that all the time. I name a thing, and then the player's like, well, what does it do? I'm like, I don't know. You tell me. That's good. I love it. I like your approach. You kind of basically took the whole scene and made a move out of it. And listeners, you can do that too, or you can just do one element from the scene as well. I'm not sure how we're going to choose what goes into the final deluxe issue of Blood, but I think it's just going to come down to the ones we like best, and then there'll be a winner.
So how long is this contest going to run?
We're going to be running this contest until September 15th, and we will announce the winner at whichever episode is recorded around that time. So,
sweet. Well, I can't wait to see what people come up with.
Yeah, and you can just post your entries, just like in previous contests. You can paste your entries into the comments of any of our G+ posts for DR.
Let's go ahead and move on to our next segment. Our next segment is What is About to Happen.
So we are resuming the story of Domenico Castafiel. And when we last saw Domenico, he was in the room of gangster Iotho Bruno, currently pressed between Iotho's body and a hostile guard. The guard has him kind of pinned up against Iotho's massive body. And this guard has one of these little maggot godlings crawling out of his mouth, whispering spells, trying to get into your mouth. That's where we left Domenico. It was not a good situation. And so I guess my question to you, Domenico, is what do you do?
Right. So I was trying to leave the guard outside the room so I could be alone with Iotho and try and leverage my position with this godling or whatever Iotho is. Or
what's inside of him, right?
Yeah, or what's inside of him. And that's not working out so great because it turns out this guard's also one of them too. So I'm like probably speaking kind of frantically to him like, what are you doing? We're on the same side. I thought the guard was against you. Get away from me.
The guard is not, you can tell the guard's not really like, I think the guard doesn't really have like any say in what's about to happen. The little maggot has now like dropped down onto your chest, basically. He's crawling up your neck. He's on your cheek, just kind of, just making those strange whispery noises, kind of guttural noises like,
and I'm like, get off of me. And that's when I turn and look at the camera and I say, you think I forgot about you, didn't you? And then I reach out my hand to my unseen servant, and he grabs it and tries to pull me out from between the guard and Iotho.
All right. Do defy danger intelligence for quick thinking to call the unseen servant.
Come on. 8.
Yes, he does pull you away. In fact, are you going to try to like escape the room entirely?
Yeah, this is going pear-shaped in a hurry. Just get the heck out of here.
So I think what's going to happen is we're going to have a little bit of at the table knowledge, right? That maybe Domenico's not aware of. He won't be aware of. You manage to escape, but what's going to happen is the little maggot godling manages to kind of like fall into your pocket or fall into a place where he'll stay. He'll be kind of riding along with you. Give me the whole rest of the scene.
Right. So I reach out my hand and then you see like the flesh of my hand compress as something invisible grabs it. And I slide out from the nastiness that is Iotho. And that's when the godling like slips into an inner pocket of my cloak. I run towards the window and pull out a rope. And I say, hold on to this. You can get out by your own means. And the unseen servant very dutifully holds on to the end of the rope as I rappel out the window.
Nice. I think we're going to end this one a little early. I just wanted to kind of get Domenico back on the board, if that's all right. But you're going back out into the city of Canalata. That's the first time we've said the city's name, by the way.
Yeah.
The city of Canalata. You're safe. You're out on the streets. It's a city of canals. It's a city of massive, huge structures that are kind of like that kind of act as like bridges that kind of crisscross over the canals, and that the canals can kind of flow through as well. Like these structures have like trenches, like waterway trenches and stuff that connect them all up. I'd like to just know just kind of your thoughts as you like hit the ground here. Like, you know, where are you going to go? What's your next move? And tell me what you see on the streets as you climb out of Yotho's window and disappear into the night. Tell me what you see on the streets that remind you that Kanalata is a city of whispers.
As I'm rappelling down the side of the building, the side of his mansion, you can see the moon rising over the waterways and reflecting off of the shimmering waves. And the waves constantly have this gurgling effect. They never really completely stop because there's always some small boat that slides along them almost silently. But that's one of the reasons it's called the City of Whispers, is because the constant churning of the water gives the impression that there's whispers.
Good.
I hit the ground and I turn my cloak inside out so that no one can see the Castifiel cloak on it. And as I try and make my way out of the city, my unseen servant rejoins me, and he seems very agitated. I mean, he can't speak, but I can tell he's agitated about something. And I'm like, what's the matter with you? Come on, we've got to get out of here. And I don't notice, but my unseen servant does, that when I turn my cloak inside out, peeking out of the pocket is a tiny human face.
Nice. Good. All right. That's where we'll leave it.
That just leaves one final question. Who's really in control here?
Hey, so normally this is when I read out the website and all that stuff. But I think this time, instead of doing that like I always do, I'd like to just take a minute to to sell listeners on the Gauntlet community a little bit. So we're more than just Dungeon World. We cover lots of different independent games, particularly powered by the Apocalypse games. We have a number of podcasts as well. In addition to Discern Realities, we have the Gauntlet podcast, which is our main show, where we talk about all sorts of games every week. It's kind of a highlight reel of the games we've been playing lately, and kind of things we liked about it, and little techniques we learned, and just little tips and stuff for play. We have Plus One Forward, which is run by our friend Rich Rogers, which focuses. He has every time the show, every new episode, he has a brand new game designer on, where they talk about a Powered by the Apocalypse game that designer worked on. And then we have Pocket Size Play, which is like our little short form AP podcast, which is pretty awesome. That one's fairly new, but I'm already quite enjoying that one a lot. What do you think of Pocket Size Play, David?
Oh, I love it. I love that they get to do kind of a bigger version of what we do at the end of the show with ours. They do 30 minutes of what we do, and they do a whole variety of games, but it's edited. It's nice, neat. It's 30 minutes. I love it.
Yeah, in addition to the podcast, the Gauntlet organizes so many games a month. Between our online games and our face-to-face meetups, probably like on the order of like 70 to 80 game nights a month at least, or game sessions. That's great. So if you want to play games, definitely go find our community and find those links at gauntlet-rpg.com. I run a lot of them. Starting soon, David will be running some of those games, which we're very happy about. What do you have on the calendar, David?
So for September, I'm taking things a little bit easy as I ease myself into running games online. So they're kind of low prep, no prep games, but I've got Microscope, Final Girl, Boy X Boy, and Fiasco on the calendar for September.
Awesome.
But I plan to start running some Dungeon World, and Jason runs Dungeon World. So if you want to play Dungeon World with us, you should get on there and join us.
Yeah, we actually have several Dungeon World GMs now on our online Hangouts community called Gauntlet Hangouts. It's pretty cool. Like, it's going well. Like, the tables are filling, and it's pretty great. Like, so we have a lot more Dungeon World that we offer now than we used to offer, when we first started the show, which is really cool. Finally, just one more thing to say about the Gauntlet community. We're soon going to be launching a Patreon. I'm not going to talk about it yet because it's still in the works and still about a month or two out. We'd encourage you to get involved in the community now, just because a lot of the stuff we do with the Patreon involves community input, and we want your feedback on some of that stuff. And so if you want to help kind of shape the Gauntlet, if you want to kind of become like sort of a stakeholder in the Gauntlet, join us. Go to gauntlet-rpg.com, find the links to our meetups, find the link to our G+ community, and follow us on Twitter at GauntletRPG.
Awesome. Thanks, Jason.
Thank you, David.
Well, thanks, listeners. That's our show.